Hello everyone, welcome to the Aardvark Swift podcast. I'm your host Michael Rodber. With me today is Paul Walker, programming consultant here at Aardvark Swift, and we're talking to Dovetail. Specifically, we're talking to Senior Talent and CSR Executive Fiona Turner and Chief Development Officer Rob O'Farrell. Hello to you both, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Not a problem. Yeah, so let's kick things off then. Tell us a little bit more about Dovetail, sort of how you were founded, where the name came from, and just a little bit about your background.
So originally the company, I think we're now 13, 14 years been going, and it was Rail Simulator. And it did exactly what it was. Yeah, we were Train Simulator 1, and that was brilliant at the time for us. But around about 8 years ago, we started to want to expand. And we want to do more than just Train Simulator 1. And the name itself as Rail Simulator didn't really work. It was great, but it didn't really encompass everything that we wanted to do as we started to approach other simulations. And then we looked at our values, we looked at what type of company we are, and Dovetail as a name seemed to really work, seemed to really suit and fit what we wanted. And that is really how it came about. And Dovetail Games expands more for us. It really isn't just about hiring people as well. Actually, one of the things Train Simulator and Rail Simulator, I've got to be into trains. Well, you don't. Working at Dovetail Games is about making games. And I think that's where the name itself came, and it's really evolved since then.
We all have a huge kind of connection as well. The thing that links us all is kind of a passion for what we do. But, you know, we're all kind of hobbyists. We all have something that we enjoy, and I think that all kind of links us in one big team as well.
Yeah, that's great. So we'll get a little bit onto the culture later, because I think you touched on some really interesting points about all like the hobbyist and the passion that links you all there. So the studio obviously specialises in simulation games, particularly in trains, and more so now into fishing too. Why these two specific hobbies? They're not specifically ideas that you'd conventionally convert into games. What made you channel these two as your two main focal points for simulations?
Well, we started off with Train Simulator. Paul Jackson, our executive chairman now, was a massive train fan. And he worked at Electronic Arts, and at the time EA were actually doing Train Simulator, I think around about 20 years ago. And then they were publishing it, and he could never be a train driver because he was colourblind. And apparently when you're colourblind, you cannot be a train driver because you can't see the signals, you can't see everything going on. And quite frankly, he said the salary won't cover what he wants to do. But so being a massive train fan, and he had the opportunity to take Train Simulator from Electronic Arts, and he built the company off there. And the other reason why we're based in Chatham in Kent is he only lives down the road. And he wanted to really give something back to his community and the area, because we're now a very big employer in the area. And I think that was a combination of what can he do with one of his great hobbies and in for the area, and that's where Train Sim came along. And then as we developed, we wanted to evolve into Unreal 4. And Train Sim World was going to come about through Unreal 4, but we didn't know it. We were PC developers at the time. I'd just come from EA, so I knew about console, but our foundation was PC. And we thought, how can we create a title and start learning UE4 and then seeing whether that could be learning we can take in Train Sim World. So we decided to do a small carp demo, a fishing demo. And we had a lake near our office, literally a pond. We decided to recreate that just to understand UE4. And it's a really good. And actually, we got into it and was like, wow. And actually, fishing's a great hobby. And once again, for us, everything always has to be about a hobby. Everything always has to be about what we can do. And it was really cool. And we thought, let's see if we can expand that. And that's how we then grew into fishing from trains. And Train Sim World learned a lot from the fishing guys.
Right, yeah, that's really interesting how it sort of was initially just started as almost an experiment to understand a new a new software and a new process and stuff. But since then, obviously, it's developed into this massive title. You've had over 289 million train simulators ran and over 145 million fish caught, it says on your website, which is, when you actually think about it, is unreal. That's a terrible joke.
We'll let you have that one.
I am very sorry for that. But yeah, so thriving in those two niche markets then, how would you credit your success in finding your target audience and sort of developing into what the two titles are today?
I think we try and understand what the hobbyist and the player wants. I think trains is very unusual in the fact that we have different markets, and trains themselves are different when you're in the UK, when you're in Germany, when you're in the US. The signalling's different, the track's different, the locos will drive differently. So we always have to make sure we keep that customer happy and the player happy with what they're experiencing. And they're so passionate about what they play. I've been at Dovetail 8 years, train simulator, and I say today, we're still on the journey. We are never complete. And that's what makes it so great. That's what makes, and your hobby never ends. Whether you're into sports, whether you're into trains, whether you're into anything, your hobby just doesn't end one day. It just carries on, and that's what's a great thing about train simulator and fishing. We just carry it on because there's so much out there that we can feed.
And I think that sort of feeds into my next question, actually. One of your sort of focal points and something that you pride yourselves on as a studio is the amount of DLC that you like to put into your games. With over 800 pieces and several free quality of life updates that you're continuously adding into your games, why is that such a crucial part of your development cycle? I suppose you've answered it to an extent of the hobby doesn't end, but how does that feed into how you develop your games?
Well, on Train Sim, because the majority of that trains those DLC pieces on Train Simulator 1. And Train Simulator 1 has now been going for nearly 13, 14 years. So over the time, even if we did 20 bits of content that year, it adds up. And there's also a lot of, for Train Sim 1, a third-party community. So we have a community that feeds that content as well, and some of those DLC factors. But because we want to keep each territory, the US happy and making sure they are driving freight or passenger, you can't get that all in one core. You can't get that all in one package. Otherwise, you'd be waiting years to get that. So we feed that throughout the year. And actually, when it comes to Train Sim World, we try and work, okay, how do we give a bit of German content? How do we give a bit of UK content? How do we get access to that content? And actually, that's something that's been a big challenge for us in a pandemic world, actually, in the last couple of years, because we've not been able to travel. We love and pride ourselves that we can travel and we can get access and reference to material and locos and the sound and just observing the track and the layout of it. It's been tough this year, and actually we've really relied on our community to give us feedback on where we could potentially get the sounds or where we can get some assets for those locos, because we want to make them as good as possible. But there's so much out there for us. I think that's a great thing. Train Sim 1, we have been doing it for so long that we pick and choose now which ones to get that right. Fishing, I think it's important for us to get that feeling of landing the fish, the hunt for the fish, making sure you're really putting your effort into what reels you're using, what lures you've got, what bait you are. I've been carp fishing, and I spent all day carp fishing, didn't catch anything. So I've got to get that balance between entertainment of a game and getting that realism of how it is to carp fish. But I couldn't create a game where you couldn't catch anything for 24 hours. Some people may struggle with that. So we've got to make sure it's entertaining, but you've got to get that balance right of the hobby. So if I went off and answered the question in a different way.
No, I think you've touched on some really interesting points there, particularly like you were saying about how you have to balance the realism with the entertainment value. Is that something in terms of the development process and testing what works and what doesn't? How do you find that balance between the two?
It is play testing. It is us having conversations, us talking about it. It's really, when I joined Dovetail, I've been in the business now for the industry for 30 years, and I was a gamer that joined this simulation trains company, and I was seen as an odd person because you're a gamer. And Train Sim 1, you can load save the game, and the scenario can take 30 minutes or something, and I saved it. And it horrified the guys that were around me, because you don't do that. What are you doing? And actually what we've learned over the years and what we've worked on is you've got to make sure it's still you can entertain. And there are times and players and gamers who love trains and fishing. They don't want to just do an hour-long scenario sometimes. They may have to go off and do something else or do some work and actually they want to save it. And it's getting that balance actually between making sure it feels real and it feels right, but also it's entertaining. And that becomes, to be honest, it's been a real conversation for us throughout development, especially since being on console. Putting that control in your hand has also changed the way we've looked at making sure fishing can work. How you land that carp, how you land that bass on that controller and getting that feeling of that is so important for us to get across.
And I suppose that goes into the creation of, not only the creation of the gameplay, but also the worlds that you create. You started to talk a little bit about it, but I'd like to delve into that a little bit more about your process of development in terms of the environments and stuff. Like you said, when you can travel, you can sort of visit these places to get real audio of trains and stuff and really get that authentic feel. Would you mind telling us a little bit more about the process in terms of creating these environments and worlds, and what the amount of effort and things that you might not think about that goes into creating an accurate simulation?
So let's start with trains, which is always a way where if we just done the London-Brighton, which is a local UK route, we get the Google data. We try and get the DEM data. We will try and get videos of a train going up and down the line so we can see the visuals of that. We have to spend quite a lot of time analysing where the signals are. And I think on the London-Brighton line, I got told there's about 2,000 signals on that line. And they have to be maybe not pinpoint to the centimetre where you'd expect them to be, but they should be where the player would expect them as they're going up and down that line. Then we look at what key buildings are there, because we want to make sure we immerse you going up and down that line. And London to Brighton takes you from Victoria all the way down to Brighton, past Battersea Power Station, if you know London well. If you didn't have that, you would lose that sense of disbelief. You wouldn't be able to be immersed into actually driving up and down that line. Going through East Croydon, it's a critical part. Clapham Junction, the busiest train station in Europe. And I was embarrassing my kids on the weekend when we took the train up and down into London, and they were amazed. It's massive, and you have to get that feeling right, because if you can't recreate that, then people don't want to drive your game. People don't want to play that. And the same thing goes for us as we look at our lakes and our bass lakes in America. We've taken now real DEM data. We haven't been able to go out and we would normally go out and do photo reference and check the real, but we've been able to take enough data and look at Google Maps and other sort of reference points from people from that area. And one of our beta testers recently said he spotted his holiday home on Lake Hamilton. So he actually got on the boat, drove on Lake Hamilton, and actually went to where his holiday home was, and the house was there. And that we don't tend to do that all the time, because you can't create every single building along. And some people do expect to see their houses. Sometimes we get that if we get the right buildings there. But that's when it's cool. That's when it's that you really realise you're developing something that people love. That's their passion, and they can feel in love with the game actually playing that, because it's like, wow, this is where I fish, this is where I go up and down the line.
I think that's something that seems to be a big focal point for Dovetail. Like when I was doing the research into your company and stuff, and one of the things on the website is that you pride yourselves on making games that celebrate the human condition. It's just something that's true and authentic almost, which I think is a really admirable thing.
But it's got to be entertaining as well. It's got to. We have so many debates about, because some locos can take 45 minutes to start. Do we create that? And we have looked at that sometimes. In other ways, we bypass that, or we help the player understand how quickly they can start the loco so they can get into the experience of driving.
Yeah. Is it just on that then? Do you have sort of options within the game to alternate between true realism or truer realism versus entertainment? Can you switch between that at all?
Well, you can turn things off. You can turn some of the parts of the HUD, you can turn some of the prompts off to make that far more immersive. I think, is a way of doing it. But there are times that, I've been playing our game for a very long time, but even I would forget how to start a loco up, so I need some prompts to help me remember which button in which order you've got to do it, because that stuff is important.
Yeah, of course. As promised, we'll go a little bit back onto the culture and sort of your internal stuff, the people behind all these fantastic simulations and stuff. Again, like I said, you all seem very passionate about what you do. You seem to have quite a varied knowledge of trains and fishing and stuff like that. So would you tell us a bit more about your culture and sort of the day-to-day that goes on at Dovetail?
Yeah, so happy to start with this one. It's been a crazy 18 months, right? We kind of sent 130 people home at the start of lockdown, and I think we're now up to about 185, 190. We're still growing, so the teams are growing. We're doing a lot of hiring at the moment. And like I said, there's this connection between us all, that we're all passionate people, and it's something that I like to ask in interviews, actually. People are very quick to tell us their work history, so tell us a bit about yourself, and it goes delving into your CV, and from my point of view, I want to know what's behind the CV, the actual person, and every time someone has a passion for something, whether that's trains, fishing, music, whatever, there is always that connection, which is great. The people we hire fit in really well. We want everybody to bring their true selves to work. We want them to feel safe in the workplace. And we're really fortunate with a new initiative this year that came up, where it's aptly named Your Base is Your Space, so people can choose to work where they think they do their best work. So I'd say we've probably got about 30 people, 40 people that want to work in an office environment, because that's where they work best. And then the rest are working fully remote from the UK, which is great. We have people dotted around everywhere, which is brilliant. We send out equipment, onboarding is done fully remote, and it really works. We get really good feedback. Plus it kind of opens that bigger candidate pool for us as well, which is really good. We have huge focus on the people, well-being of staff. We have a very good team of mental health first aiders. We also send out care packages throughout lockdown to every single member of staff, just to make them feel valued. We've continued with weekly company meetings for every single member of staff. That's quite something to see, actually, on Zoom with 180 faces, keep scrolling along the pages. So it's a great place to be.
One thing to add to that, actually, yes, we love passion for trains and passion for fishing, but actually we also take on board the passion for what you believe in. So if it's art in the environment, or if it's physics in the loco, or if it's, you want to get into characters, actually it's just as important for us. Fishing trains, yes, but actually you're passionate about what you're coming to do. And I think that's one of the things I think we've evolved over the last 10 to 14 years, and coming from being a train sim PC studio, which can make you in a certain bracket, and going console, and then going fishing, and actually it's broadened the way we look for people who want to join. And it doesn't mean you have to be into that trains and fishing, but we want you to be into making great games. We want you to be into what you believe you're coming to do, whether it's for the environment, or actually we're building up our character teams at the moment, because we want to make great characters in our game. And I think that, and we love actually getting people that might just start in the industry and working with them and growing them and putting them into positions. Sometimes they may think, God, why? You're getting me to do this stuff that's going to go out live? Yes. Just because you're just new, why not? You're just as passionate, you can deliver just as much sometimes, and senior people that have been in industry for 20, 30 years that may be a little bit jaded.
So do you have a graduate recruitment programme?
We don't. We are looking into it. Something that we certainly want to do for the future. We're involved with a lot of unis, direct colleges. We like to give back to the communities as well, and going to local schools, etc. We're not just thinking of hiring for today or tomorrow. We're looking at planning for the future as well, 3, 4, 5 years. If we can inspire young people to come and join us and let them know that there are these career choices that they can have within Medway, then we're doing a good thing.
We take on a lot of grads, even though it's not through a programme. And actually, we took a graduate programmer on about 6 years ago, 5, 6 years ago. He's now our lead programmer across all formats on Train Sim World. because his passion for engineering and his passion for trains, it does help. But he grew through the company, and actually we worked out. I've been in the industry longer than he's been alive, and that was an interesting conversation when we had that. But he's teaching us things about what we can do to make our game great, and that's the most important thing.
We have a really good system for if we hire juniors, we mentor them through their careers. And we have a matrix system in development, don't we? Where you're in clear control of your own goals. It's there for all members of staff to see, and people are promoted from within.
People are promoted within. People have left and gone off on to better positions elsewhere. Do I like that? No, but I love that. I'm proud of the fact that they've gone off and got promoted and senior positions beyond what they are. I think it's really good. That's. We want everyone to do the best job.
I think that's very valuable, and I think it's very nice to hear that you've got that kind of mentality of cultivating both people all the way from juniors all the way up to leads, and sort of really focusing in on their development and their kind of goals. I think that's very valuable in the industry at the moment. So when you do take people on, then what's the kind of process? I know you mentioned about really asking people about the passion and the person behind the CV and stuff, but would you mind going into a little bit more about that on how the process?
Yeah, so our kind of interview process we like to keep as relaxed as we can. We kind of call first interviews initial chats. I think the world's changed in the last 18 months with hiring and the way that we do things. Obviously it's very video focused now, so our first initial chats are just really a getting to know you exercise. It doesn't delve too deep into your technical background if it's a technical role. We like to look at portfolios online, screen sharing, etc. But yeah, like I said, we want to get the best out of somebody in that chat to find out whether or not all our values align to move forward. Depending on the role, there could be potentially a test for the second interview. Say an engineering role, that would involve a live coding task, and then a second interview meeting more of the teams.
And sometimes with the coding test, actually, it's not about completing everything. It's how you actually take the test on and what you do answer, and then explaining some of those tests. Because sometimes people, you see 10 questions, you think, well, I've got to answer all. You don't. It's actually answering in a great quality way, and actually getting across your thought process is far more important actually than just answering everything on the test.
I think one of the biggest questions I tend to come across from people who have done the specific engineering tests on the coding tests can be the further down the career they are, they sometimes find some of the questions on the coding tests are very much the sort of thing that maybe they were asked at university as a more theoretical base and haven't had the practical application later on in their careers to be able to answer some of those types of questions.
And that's why it then becomes actually the conversation with the person that answers that test, because they may not have got it right, but it comes through that thought process and just okay, what was you thinking there? Because I know we've had some people that have failed the test, but through the conversations we've had with them, actually their thinking and their thought process is brilliant. So they just didn't articulate it properly down on paper during the test, but and then we've hired them, and they've been brilliant. We always encourage, just because someone's may have done it slightly different, let's talk to the people anyway and talk through it. Because of what you just said there, it's a good example.
I guess while we talk on the programming side of things and sort of relating to the engineering, I know when I've spoken to Fiona in the past, something that we've always talked about is the challenges on the engineering side of doing something with the depth and realism of a sim game compared to, let's say, a first-person shooter title, for example. What do you find are the sort of biggest challenges with the programming development side of the titles?
It depends, because we spread out the program roles. We can have the people that are going to help with the gameplay, so they can come from a team from a first-person shooter, or they can where we look at certain physics roles and simulgraph, especially, which is something we created for Train Sim World. A good physics engineer should be able to help talk through how an engine can work. I don't think the basis of you have to know everything about train sim matters so much. Great, it's always a benefit, but it's more about understanding the research you're going to put in, and then how you're going to turn that into code, and then actually something that will be played. I've done Need for Speed. I've worked with Battlefield guys before. Engineers are just people who need to have a great thought process of what they're delivering and how they're delivering it. And some of the guys I've bought from previous studios, and they were just as good on Train Sim. And Fishing Sim, because it has that slight more game element or sports element of fishing, it probably you'd say I can go more gamey side. But the engineers themselves, I find they can work on anything, really. What we do need to do, though, is make sure, and part of the reason why we're probably having this conversation is you don't have to be so simulation-based to come and work here. You really don't. A great engineer can put his or her mind to anything. Really, they really can. So it's really, can they take the challenge on and a thought process and making sure Simograph and we can make the train work. And because we all get feedback from our players if we don't get something right.
I guess it's the interesting point with the market at the moment is very saturated with everybody wanting those Unreal programmers, the C++ experienced programmers, and the engineers out there who are looking are all about what can their next challenge offer that's different to maybe something that they've already done in the past. Yep,
and I think if I look where I've taken Train Sim World on console, let's take my Xbox One journey. When we started trying to do Xbox One on Train Sim World 7 years ago, the programmers told me it wasn't even possible. There was no way on hell we can get Train Sim World working on Xbox One. And then we actually got Sandpatch Grade, which is a US freight, working. Then we got Paddington to Reading working. And this next week we are going to have a train on it is Series X, but even on Xbox One we're going to have a 50 consists, and a consist is a coach who's been pulled by four different locos, and that is because engineers are taking on the challenge, and actually what we've done, we've said to them, come here, and I'll tell you what, you will have to think slightly differently. You will have to work out how you can't be lazy with your coding. You're going to think about how you're going to do this to make that train work, to make sure. We took Unreal, and Unreal wasn't used to having the acre lakes, the streaming of the trains, of the track. It just wasn't used to that, and we took it in different angles and different directions. And I think that's where we can promise a challenge for any engineers, whether they're new engineers, whether they've been in industry quite a long time. I think there is things we can always say, this is why I feel satisfying. And I think that it's interesting, when I got the Mickey taking that of me for joining Dovetail because we were a train company. Why do you want to go and join a train company? And I got the typical jokes of choo-choo and all that sort of stuff when I joined. I've been at EA for 14 years and Probe Acclaim for years before that. But wow, now people just look at it and go, you're delivering realism to an element that on trains of fishing that is we just didn't think Dovetail could do. And actually that's because we're challenging our engineers to do something slightly different.
You've already mentioned a little bit there about the moving from PC to console. I guess how did you find that in the early stages, because with the optimization and the more limitations of having to work within the boundaries of a console platform?
It was difficult. It was hard. We want to have a busy network. We want the trains going up and down. We want you to have that great experience that you can have when you're going to London or Brighton at 8 o'clock in the morning. We wanted to make sure our fishermen had a great experience on the lake with the right fish in there. And that was pushing the consoles to a level. Great, now the PS5 and Xbox Series X are out. I think that's taken that to the next level. And like I say, we've got Sherman Hill is going to have a consist of, I think it's 106 coaches, and there's a video out there at the moment that's nearly 3 minutes long, and all we've done, we've just placed the camera down and you watch the train go by. There was no way that was possible 5 years ago. We could have hacked it and we could have made the trains look poor, but we have a quality that we want to hit in everything we do, because our players deserve that and demand that, actually.
Any particular specific roles that you find the most challenging to recruit for?
So there's a couple of roles at the moment. I think physics, I think we're always looking for. Our audio is an area that I really want to push forward. And I would love to hear from any audio engineers out there that would be interested to. And I think we do a great job. We use the base U4 and I think we push it, but there's so much more that we could do with audio to immerse our players and onto the lake as they're catching the fish and landing the fish, and on the train and the busyness of being at the station. And I want to have that whole vibe of commuter hour going on. And I think we are looking for audio engineers specifically to help us with that. Actually, that's one, because people might think, it's not going to be challenging doing that. We could bring the world to life in audio. I want people to play our game with their eyes shut in some ways and just listen to it and enjoy it.
I guess the curiosity is, from a candidate background, has the studio been more open to having to have that games experience unless they're a graduate level coming through the door, or are sort of wider variety of coding backgrounds open if they have the right skill set, so C++, or somebody with a strong games background who may come across from a C# background, for example?
I think as a company, we are really open. We don't shut people down because they have slightly different experience. If they have the passion and desire to learn and actually show what their experience is going to bring, we will always open ourselves up to any candidates.
Yeah, I think specifically for the programming roles at the moment, I work really closely with our technical director. The roles that we are looking for, as are a lot of other companies at the moment, we want good programmers with good C++, Unreal Engine experience. We've recently taken on some grads and a physics programmer as well. We're open, and as Rob said, passionate people that have really got a really good work ethic. We're always happy to talk to them.
I suppose that plays into your expansion recently. I think you touched upon it earlier, Fiona. Over the last 18 months, you've grown. I can't remember the figure now, but you've grown a fair bit over the coming weeks, months, years. What's your kind of plan for the studio, and is there anything you can talk about in terms of your development plans there?
We are growing. That's all I will say. We've got projects, we've got things in the pipeline. Lots of exciting things. The teams will be getting larger. At the moment, you'll see on the website we're focusing on expanding those Train Sim World teams. In the new financial year, we'll look at what more we're doing as well.
Is there anything in terms of content on the horizon that you'd like to talk about? Any projects at all?
We're always on and I like calling it a journey on our simulations, and that's why I don't think we're finished, and we're far from finished on Train Simulator or fishing. I mean, we've just expanded multiplayer on fishing. I think there's loads of stuff for us to learn on that. We've just announced Catan, which is a board game, and we're doing that with a developer, Nomad. And that's quite exciting for us, because that takes once again in a different hobby space, which I think is really important for us. And where that leads to, I don't know. I think that's a really exciting space. But we look at opportunities to see how we can expand. But we also know there's so much more we can do with Train Sim World and Fishing Sim World and Bassmaster.
Is there any sort of simulation spaces that you'd consider or would like to move into? So you've got trains and fishing. Is there anything else?
Yes, I think we've got water. We could do boats. At some point would we look to do driving? Possibly. But I left EA after doing Need for Speed Most Wanted, and we finished it on the Wii U. I wouldn't go into that space because that's a very competitive, crowded space that I just don't think we need to touch. But driving could be one though, and there's so much you can do there. But once again, I wouldn't want to do it if it's going to stretch what we do today. We've done it over the years, and I don't want to stretch our people. I want to make sure they're focused and they can deliver great stuff at what we're doing now until we get that great idea, and that may come. The closing thing for me is, I've worked on teams where we've been 200 people and stuff, and you can get lost. Everyone makes a difference when they come work here. Everyone will make a difference every single day to what we're delivering. Doesn't matter whether that's in the studio, publishing, retail, finance. You can be doing any role at Dovetail and you will make a difference. And I think that's the biggest thing, and that makes it really proud, actually.
Well, that all sounds fantastic. If anyone listening is interested in working with Dovetail, all the roles that we are advertising are on our website, so please do go and check those out, and you can apply directly. Thank you very much for listening to the podcast. I've been your host, Michael Rodber, and we've been talking to Dovetail. Thanks. Cheers.